Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Web and Data Interviews. And we got a really exciting interview today with my friend Santona Tuli from Upsolver. We're going to be talking about all sorts of really great things like data ingestion, streaming, Apache Iceberg, and all sorts of really cool stuff. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys that I spent a good chunk of last year writing a book called Apache Iceberg: The Definitive Guide, which is about to be physically released. You can get yourself still get yourself a free copy by heading over to dremio.com and looking up the Apache Iceberg page, where you can just get a free copy. But do also think about picking a physical copy up on Amazon.com. The release date will be May 2nd to coincide with the Subsurface conference, which you should also register at dremio.com/subsurface. But with no further ado, let's begin. Shantona, great to have you on. I would love to hear a little bit for the audience about sort of your origin story, sort of your career, what brought you to Upsolver, and so forth. So let's start there.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex. I'm really looking forward to your book, and congratulations that it's getting published soon. So I'm a physicist by training. And the first few years that I worked in data was through particle physics. So I was analyzing really large data sets of particle collisions, to be specific, nuclear collisions, to sort of quantify various parameters for the strong nuclear force. And then from there, I transitioned into industry, worked as an ML engineer in the NLP space, and then I worked as a data scientist at a managed airflow company. So that was sort of my foray into tooling in the data space. And then I came to Upsolver, which is also a data tool. And yeah, I've been at Upsolver for a year and a few months, and I work with data, I work with product strategy, I work with growth strategy. It's a little bit of a hybrid role with a lot of mixed responsibilities, but it's been really fun so far.
Yep, no, I can definitely relate. Working at these at these sort of burgeoning data companies really requires all hats to be worn. And but tell us a little bit about Upsolver, sort of like what is sort of because like there's different like data ingestion stories. Like there's like companies like Fivetran and Airbyte. Now, what makes Upsolver sort of unique, and what is sort of the sort of unique proposition that Upsolver has?
Yeah. So in the data ingestion space, our unique proposition is we work really well with very high scale data. So data that's moving really fast, being generated at really fast rates and at high volumes. And if your data is deeply nested and stuff, we just sort of figure out the schema automatically and evolve schema and stuff. Um, we're also really good at streaming data. So in a lot of cases, the like some of our the other tools in space for like data movement are sort of batch first, and
Mm-hmm.
then they've tried to add some streaming capabilities, but usually, the time frame during which like the time frame that they can actually support is on the order of several minutes, whereas we're at a much shorter time scale because the engine is stream first. Now, that's in the data ingestion space, but we actually have a bunch of like a set of capabilities in the lakehouse space as well, which is so with Iceberg, it's relatively recent, but our we've always had a product called SQL Lake, which is a managed lakehouse also, but with our custom table format. So it was proprietary, and now we've sort of welcomed and incorporated the open lakehouse table format that is Apache Iceberg. And so in that lakehouse offering, we do again like streaming data, ingestion, optimization of the data storage, the metadata management. We do separation of storage and compute, and have state and all the metadata in S3 in addition to the data itself. So if the cluster goes down, you spin it back up, and you can just pick up exactly where you left off. So yeah, a bunch of cool capabilities there. And since we've incorporated Iceberg as well, we don't just support it as a format that you can
Mm-hmm.
store data in within Upsolver, but if you have a data Iceberg Lakehouse anywhere, you can just use the optimization feature in Upsolver, so we don't have to like ingest into it necessarily. We can just optimize your Iceberg table wherever it's sitting.
Got it. Yeah, that's really cool. And then you guys did a big announcement for these features. And again,
Yeah.
I feel very humbled to be part of the lineup you guys did for Chill Summit, which was an event that
Yeah.
Upsolver did a couple weeks ago, no, like a month ago now in New York. And you guys just recently released all the footage of that for anyone who wants to go watch those talks. There's a lot of really good ones. One of my favorites was you guys talking about some of the contributions you guys made into solving some of the streaming challenges with Iceberg. So that was actually really really fascinating. But yeah, so definitely go check out that. But on the SQL Lake, so going back to sort of like before the Iceberg features, you got SQL Lake using your proprietary format. Now, what I'm thinking of is like sort of like when if it's in that format, sort of like how would other tools sort of access like that data. So like let's say with like let's say I'm using Spark and I'm doing some reads, would I be able to access like the SQL Lake, or would generally queries have to come out of Upsolver?
Yeah, no. So the data is stored in if you choose the SQL Lake, then the data is stored in Parquet tables with the Hive metadata
Oh, okay, got it.
catalog, and with the Iceberg version, it's Parquet and the Iceberg table format. The the one thing I'd say is we're actually a Spark alternative, so
Mm-hmm.
we you could just offload whatever
Mm-hmm.
workloads you're running in Spark into Upsolver. But also, yeah, if you're so we when you build a lake with Upsolver, the lake lives in your S3, and we provision a glue catalog. And so any tool you can use, whatever tool you can use to connect to and query through the glue catalog, you're good. So I mean, a lot of our clients use Athena, but you can use whatever query engine you want.
Yeah, yeah. You guys can use Dremio. So if anyone's out there,
Yeah,
you ingest your tables into an AWS catalog. Go check out Dremio and run some queries. But
exactly.
again, Athena is very good for ad hoc queries. If you're already in the AWS ecosystem, it's right there. But yeah. Two. What was I gonna ask? Oh, also the other cool thing you guys announced was like you guys I think open source like this optimizing tool or like this like optimizing checker. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's a diagnostics tool to analyze the health of your iceberg lake or iceberg tables. So iceberg itself has an ability to do optimization, right? You have to tell it to do the optimization though. So if you're doing it in a custom, then there you have to think about sort of writing those jobs. And then any tool that provides a managed iceberg service, of course, does its own optimization on top of Iceberg. So we have built a really good optimizer, especially for the streaming use cases, but applies to batch use cases as well. But in streaming case, you end up with a lot of small files, so it's important to be able to compact those small files into a larger file on a regular basis. So we're really good at that. So you can you know whoever's managing your iceberg table, you can if you want to know, well, how optimized is it, how optimal is my lake, could I save money on storage costs, could I save money on data scan costs and stuff, you can just use this open source tool that we release. It's called iceberg diag, iceberg dash diag, for diagnostics. It's on GitHub. You just check it out and run it on your against your iceberg tables, and it's going to tell you this is the sort of improvement that you're going to be able to get if you optimize this table in terms of data scan, file size, partitions, and so on and so forth. So it's a free, easy to use way to sort of just see if your lake could be optimized further.
Cool. And now moving on to just sort of like what has been really interesting to you lately? Like, is there like other things in the data space that have just kind of caught your attention and been like, yeah, that's something I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to evolve in the future or whatnot? Sort of, what would those things be?
Yeah, I do think that it's a very interesting time right now because of the open table formats. I think that that's actually going to be not just because, I'm at Upsolver and we're invested in
Mm-hmm.
Iceberg, and obviously you are as well, but if I take a step back and sort of look at it through a broader lens too, I think it is time to re-envision slash re-architect the way that we handle data, store data, process, access data. I do think that it's going to be interesting to watch this space of, I mean, obviously the table formats are here. They're open source, but there are different companies that are, building them, contributing to them, and then providing managed services on top. So it's definitely going to be interesting to sort of see, how that plays out. But more broadly too, is what sort of adoption we're going to see is like the survey that Dremio did last year. The results were really interesting, and I'm actually planning on running a similar survey in a few months' time, because even between last November, whenever that survey was run, and a few months from now, I expect the data to be significantly different, because just the number of people that are talking about Iceberg
Mm-hmm.
these days, and Lake House's open table formats is a lot higher. It's like it's sort of happening across the board, and lots of companies are announcing first class support for Iceberg as well. So yeah, I definitely think that's a space to watch. And the main, like, the revolution part of that is the fact that we've been locked into certain proprietary table formats for a few years now, and they may be modern, but they're expensive. So just being able to break out of that into an open format, I think is going to uh, we're going to see some changes in the data industry. And then, of course, the other thing that's happening is large generative models that are coming out, and both language computer vision and then multimodal ones. I think that's definitely a space to watch as well. On that front, I think I'm most excited to sort of see the steady state as it evolves, because right now there are lots of companies that are like sort of getting excited about it, and um, trying to incorporate into their product, even if like there isn't a great fit, or build some product on top of LLMs or generative models. And I think, I mean, just the way that these things work out, right? And just the way the economy works out, at some point we're going to start seeing like, okay, these are the ideas that are sticking. This is where people are actually finding value. So it'll be interesting to see like what the big use cases are that we actually use AI for.
Oh, 100%. This is an absolutely fascinating time. And like as you mentioned, just like things like Apache Iceberg, things like Apache Arrow that are providing sort of open standards that the industry can sort of really build around. Is really exciting at the implications, because I mean you can imagine a world where basically how the data is stored, how the data transfers, how the data is processed, all becomes so standard that really tools become so much easier to integrate. It's not like everyone's like, hey, do you have a connector for this? Do you have a connector for that? And it's just, you just use this, everyone connects in standard way and everything just kind of plugs and plays. That'll be a beautiful world, because I mean, I know every startup is always kind of jungling between like all the possible connectors and which one's the right next connector to make. It's just,
Right.
it is what it is. Um,
Yep.
but yeah.
No, couldn't agree more. Like, as a saying goes, a bad standard is better than no standard, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, having standardization in especially like how you organize your metadata and how you, sort of plan your queries. I think that's a big deal.
100%. It's exciting times. Now, basically, as we start getting towards the end here, what I'd like to know is like, where can people sort of follow you? So, like, what are the best places for people to follow your work? Like what's your LinkedIn, Twitter? Do you have like a blog that people can check out? Anything where people can kind of just continue to kind of see your progress and follow what you're up to.
Yeah, I'm available on LinkedIn, and I sometimes write posts. Sometimes I get a little disinfatuated with LinkedIn and step away from it too. So, but yeah, I mean, but by all means, like if you want to connect with me or find me, that's the best way. I don't have a blog of my own. I'll sometimes write on the Upsolver blog. Um, yeah, I mean, but I do a lot of podcasts, and I love talking with other data folks. So that's that's another way to sort of hear my ramblings if there's interest.
And on that note, like, where would people find out more about Upsolar?
You can go to the Upsolver website. We recently got a fresh new look. Um, So it's a good looking website. And you can go through our blogs. We write on recently we've been writing a lot on just educational content on iceberg and lake houses, and what the differences are between data lakes and lake houses and warehouses. And we have a YouTube channel, as you mentioned. We just uploaded the Chill Data Summit videos, recorded talks, and that's really, it's a gem. So I would recommend folks to sort of go and check that out, because it's just a bunch of people super knowledgeable in iceberg talking about what their passion projects and what the efficiencies that they've been able to unlock. And it's not vendor pitches, it's just informative and educational. So yeah.
Yep, no, that was definitely a really cool. I definitely learned a lot while I was over there at Chill Summit, and this has been a great conversation, Shantona. So thank you for being on the show. We look forward to possibly having you again in the future as new developments come up over there at Upsolver. So again, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex.
And everybody, that's going to wrap up today's show. I'll put all the links in the video description. Again, you can head over to Dremio.com if you want to pick up a copy of the Apache Iceberg book. But again, all the links to Upsolver and everything else we've talked about in this interview will be in the show notes. Thank you guys for joining me again for an episode of Web and Data Interviews. Have a great day. I'll see you all later.